Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. Hello, Heather. Thanks so much for joining us.
I'm super excited to see where we go.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you here. If this is someone's first episode, Heather and I have not met before. This is how I like to do it. It's kind of just off the cuff. We just talked about a couple technical things before we got started, but nothing else, I promise.
No spoilers, like nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So for me and for anybody who's listening, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Heather?
How long a story do you want?
You just go ahead and jump in. Just whatever you want to start, because
All right.
I'm probably gonna have questions along the way. So
Cool. That's cool. So, my current incarnation is as a transformation facilitator and life coach. And it's funny because I usually call myself a real life coach because I like to say, I like the solutions that we talk about for people who are feeling like super overwhelmed. You're already overwhelmed. We can't add more onto what you do. It has to fit your real life. So that's why I came up with this term real life coach.
Real life coach. I see.
Like your real life. It can't be rainbows and unicorns all the time, This is not the way life rolls. So, but it's funny because my career didn't start out that way. I started as a CPA and I did that for 15 years. And I was making the money and I had the stock options and the big house in the suburbs. And I was like, I don't like this. I wasn't happy.
Interesting.
And I started practicing yoga for stress relief. And being the overachiever that I was, I help overachievers because I'm mostly recovered. But I was like, I'm going every single day because
yeah,
I'm going to be the best at yoga. Right? So funny.
I get it, yeah.
When I look back now, because this was I started practicing yoga 24 years ago.
Okay.
When I was 6. No, I'm kidding. So I was practicing yoga after work for stress. And one day I was rushing to yoga. I'm driving. I'm like, I got to get to yoga. And I live in Toronto.
That's so funny.
I know. I live in Toronto. So it's not as busy as some, big US cities in comparison, but it's a busy traffic city. The traffic here is awful. And I was driving through this intersection and there was this pedestrian and are you allowed to curse on this show?
You can say whatever you want.
And swearing and what, honking, what are you doing in the middle of the road? You're going to get killed. And I looked up and my light was red. I was like, oh shit. It's me who's the idiot in this case. And I had a big smack upside the head because I'm like, okay, how am I not dead? First of all, because there's 4 lanes of traffic in either direction that are coming at me. And there's a pedestrian. I was like, this isn't good. That I was so disconnected. Yoga is trying to teach people to, mind, body, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
Not to discount it, but I was like, I was not in that headspace. So I got to yoga. I said to my yoga teacher, this just happened. She was like, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? And just looked at me. I was like, you're supposed to be wise. Tell me what's going on.
You're supposed to be wise.
So that was kind of my, something's not quite right. I probably have to change something. And, the universe conspires all the time to help you out. So I was working on this big project I worked for this $1 billion corporation.
Okay.
I was working on this big project to kind of bring all these different divisions and bring them together and kind of get them set up. And my project was coming to an end. And that was going to mean a promotion. And I was talking to one of my coworkers. I'm like, I don't want another promotion. She's laughing. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, recognition, money and all that. But I was trading my life for dollars, which didn't seem I don't care what my title is. Who cares?
Sure.
That doesn't say anything about me as a person. But so I quit my job I have this friend who took me out. Well, he's not my friend anymore. He took me out to lunch and he said, I had to look you in the eye because I was going to take you down to the health, like the mental health facility and have you committed. I said, all I'm doing is quitting my job.
Yeah.
Well, I was also getting divorced. So quit my job, got divorced, sold my house, and took off to India for 3 months.
India.
Yeah, I went to India.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, what should I do? Let's go big. And that scares the pants off people because that's not everybody's jam, right? Not everybody is going to chuck it all, even though they might feel like it. It's too scary. And it might not even be the best action for a lot of people.
Sure. Yeah.
For me, it was like everything lined up really well. It was like my job, there was no burning of bridges. I could just leave it. My wedding, my marriage had been on the rocks for a while. Let's just finish that off. And well, we don't need the house anymore. Let's sell it. So yeah, sold everything, went off to India. I only went for 3 months because I promised my grandmother that I would come home for Christmas, which is why I came back. Because even at the end of it, I was like, wow, not really quite done yet, right? There's so much to be. Have you ever been there?
I haven't, no.
It is one of the most challenging places I had ever traveled for a variety of reasons. I mean, just the infrastructure isn't the same. The language isn't the same. As a woman, you get treated a little differently. I mean, luckily I was traveling with a male yoga teacher, co-yoga teacher. I had started studying teaching to teach yoga, and he was going as well, and he came with me because sometimes they wouldn't talk to me. They would talk to him. They would go, who is she? I was like, can we take her photo? It's like, charge them 5 rupees. Let's pay for our next round of beer. Like, charge some money for this.
So funny.
But yeah, it was fascinating. And being away for that long and so out of your natural element gives you a lot of space to think about what the hell you're going to do with your life, right?
Sure.
And for some people, that if you can't find the space to really get clear on what you want, you kind of have to create it, right? If you're in your stuff every single day and you can't step outside of it, but you know you're not happy, you got to find a way to step out of it. Not everybody can take 3 months. I understand there's like financial commitments and kids and all this jazz, but finding a way to step outside of your stuff is so valuable. So valuable. Oh my goodness. So when I came back, I opened my own yoga studio with the person that I went to India with. I went back to school for 2 years and became a registered massage therapist while I was opening a yoga studio. And I became a personal trainer because I thought, not everybody's into yoga. I'll teach them to pump iron too. So, yeah, it's like ever since then, it's all been like I went from accountant. Well, her accountant Heather still comes out every now and then when I'm doing my own financials for my business. And then I went into wellness Heather, where it's like peace and love and harmony, mostly. And helping people. I was helping people find their physical wellness because I felt like that was, having spent 12 hours a day at a desk, I knew that a lot of people suffering from just being in a body, not taking care of it properly. I've been listening to these. I don't know. Do you know Sheila Gillette? She channels the entity Theo. She was the entity actually who told Esther Hicks that she was going to be talking to Abraham. So she's like way old school in the channeling world. And I was just listening to her before I came on, and she's like, when she's Theo, she talks very like digital. She's like, you are a spirit having a human body. You are not a human body having a spiritual experience. So I'm like, okay, well, let's take care of these bodies while they're here so we can have some fun. And then I had my own massage clinic and as well as the yoga studio because still an overachiever. I had these young massage therapists working for me, and I would say, you should do this and you should do this. Like I was kind of coaching them on how to be successful so they could still pay their rent.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them said to me, Heather, you should teach people this. And I thought, what a great idea. So I started coaching.
Okay.
And I started business coaching first. I had a Build Your Better Business podcast. I was trying to teach all these health and wellness people who I love health and wellness people, but they tend to be the type of people who think that money will just arrive. I'll just visualize it. They feel uncomfortable billing people for things. So it's like I needed to bring to them the practical side of running a business so that they could sustain their businesses. And in 2021, I had a stroke. I didn't believe the doctors at first. I was arguing with them for a while. I was like, dude, seriously? Do you know how healthy I am? But they showed me the MRI. I'm like, okay, fine. I've had a stroke. But it was COVID. Like it was, I mean, people were starting to get back out and about. But here, people still weren't, like, nobody could, you still couldn't go into the ER unless you were being treated. So nobody could come and visit me.
Okay.
There was no beds in the hospital. So I actually spent 3 days in the emergency room on a cot.
Wow.
It's like, okay, this is fun. There's nobody to talk to. I can't use my phone because my vision had gone all wonky. It's like, okay, so I got a 3-day silent retreat. Thanks, universe.
Involuntary retreat.
Yeah, I got an involuntary retreat. Yeah, score. And it's funny because I say, I took 3 months, then I took 3 days. That was granted to me to sit in the ER. And it was Halloween here. So the people in the emergency room were so interesting to listen to. There was a woman there she had hurt her eye at a Halloween party. It's like somebody had poked her in the eye with something. And she was wearing a bikini and assless chaps. I was like, oh, shit. You must be freezing. She was pretty hot, though, I'll tell you. But luckily, they gave her a blanket. It's like, okay. There was a big dude there who was angry about something. And he was walking around with no shoes on, yelling. And I'm like, okay, I'll just stay behind my curtain. I was behind this curtain. And there were some cops there who were talking about the prostitute they just brought in. But then there was like normal people. Like there was a mom there with her kid who was sick and she was worried about him. And there was a woman there with her elderly father who had fallen down. And he was like, I'm fine. I should just go home. I just fell. It's fine. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of life going on in the emergency room. Like, love you, ER workers. You're some of the best. And while I was laying there, like the only people I talked to was when the nurse came in every few hours to check my stats and make sure I was still alive. And I was like, okay. So at some point I just went, okay, so what's the deal? Like, why am I here? And that's where my podcast, that's actually when it started. The name came, okay, your podcast is called Back to Me. I'm like, okay, Back to Me. That's a good name for a podcast. And then said, here's your program. So instead of business coaching now, I turned into this like, we got to look at your whole life. This is your whole life. So you look at your physical wellness, yeah, for sure. But you have to look at your emotional wellness. You have to look at your community. Like, who are the people around you? Who do you invite into your space? Have you read that book, Who's in Your Room? It's a good book.
Okay.
Not just from a business perspective, but like who do you allow into your energetic space? What do you do as an occupation? And it doesn't have to be tied to money. It can be volunteer work. I have a client who's actually retired and her occupation is poetry. And she takes it really seriously. Like she's got deadlines for herself and stuff she does. I'm like, that is her occupation. It's not tied to her income.
Interesting.
But you also have to take care of your income. So I haven't taken out the business aspect.
Yeah.
It's like, you've still got Michael Bernard Beckwith called it coin of the realm. You still need coin of the realm in this day and age. We're not in Star Trek yet.
Coin of the realm.
Whatever. You still need money for food and shelter and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you need to take care of your soul. So your spirit came into your body to do something. And it doesn't have to have epic Hollywood music or explosions or, curing cancer or any of that jazz. It can be simple. But if you're not doing it, you're going to feel out of whack. Like you're going to
Mhm.
feel like you're missing something.
Okay.
I think some people are always on the run and always like got that drive because they're trying to figure out what it is, but they're kind of looking in the wrong place. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Sure, sure.
Like,
I'd love to ask you some questions now.
go to I've been talking away for like the
No, it's
last
okay. It's
15
okay.
minutes
I like to let people just talk because
because
I feel
I
like
would
it's
keep going.
no, it's okay. No, it's okay. Let's talk about it a little bit because I feel like
Okay.
there's so much to pull out of this. So
What do you got?
back at the beginning, okay, you said you were a CPA for how many years?
15.
Okay, and you started going to yoga because why?
I was stressed out.
Okay, gotcha. What I'm curious of, because you still, even after you felt like the yoga didn't help you, you still decided to, become a yoga teacher. I'm curious what you felt like the disconnect was there. Like why you feel like the yoga wasn't helping you in the way that you thought it was going to help you when you started it.
Well, it's funny when we go into stuff with expectations, right?
Sure.
Because if you look at social media, you're like, oh my God, all those people are so happy I suck. So when you're looking at yoga teachers, you're like, oh, they're always so blissful and happy and just
Mm.
floating around and nothing ever goes wrong for them.
Floating around.
Right? So you go into that, like when I had my yoga studio, I used to joke, everybody comes for the yoga butt. It's like, that's not what it's about. But I had to, like, it's interesting. So I was getting benefit from it, but my expectation of what I should be getting was different. I'm like, I should be this
Mm-hmm.
instead of this, or I should be better by now, or I should be less stressed now.
Mm.
And the yoga can help you do a lot of things. Like it helped actually, in retrospect, it was helping me be less stressed, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't stopping me from being an idiot and working too
Sure.
much,
Sure.
right?
Yeah,
Because I was
it
trying to
reminds
cram it
me.
into a life that was already full. It's like,
Mm,
"Ugh." So
yeah.
you're trying to like force things to happen instead of letting things happen. And I remember I was teaching because I'm also a kayaking guide and a sea kayak instructor, and I had a group of 10 ladies out in Georgian Bay. If people know, like the big bay above Ontario, that big wide
Okay.
open water thing. I took a group of 10 ladies out, would teach them how to camp, and I was teaching yoga. And I said to the group at one point, so instead of forcing, your yoga to happen, can you just let it happen? And this lady was like, no. She needed to force this to happen. I'm like,
Mm,
okay, that's cool. you know,
yeah.
what yoga does is it helps you accept if you practice it long enough, because now I've been teaching it for 20 years, it helps you accept kind of what's going on, but you don't have to stay there. Like, you're like, okay, like, let's be honest. Right now, I'm this. Would I like to be a little bit over that way? Yeah, I would. So I'll start doing some stuff to get over that way.
Interesting.
But
So you feel like it's more about awareness then?
hugely about awareness.
Yeah.
And
And
but
I would agree with you on that. I've
yeah,
done some yoga. Well, first of all, I have friends that teach yoga and they always want me to come do it and I'm a little bit out of shape and I get way out of breath when I do yoga. Like I never
okay.
thought I would like be out of breath just standing. Like it seems so strange. Like I was like I don't understand how I'm out of breath right now. So I don't do it all the time. I'm in the process
It's
of getting in better shape, but
hilarious.
I will say that like yoga I kind of tie yoga in with other things like just in general like stretching and like meditation and all of that stuff and I really feel like what like the value in those things is that like slowing down and like just becoming more aware of what's happening in your body in your mind all of those things and so
Right.
just like what you were said this is part of the reason why I asked this before about yoga and how you felt like maybe it wasn't meeting your expectations and you hit the nail on the head is that it's just like a piece of the puzzle because like you were saying before even when you were doing coaching it was kind of like well there's other parts of your life though right it's not just
Yeah.
this and everything is tied together And so you're like, you think the yoga is just going to solve your problems. And you're like, no, no, no. It's
Well, it's
literally
so
just a
funny.
piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
you know?
When I was a massage therapist, so I did massage therapy for 14 years, and I retired a couple of years ago. And I had this lady one time because I worked in the downtown business district. This lady comes in, she goes, I need you to fix this. I'm like, okay, just lie down, relax. And she's like, isn't there just a pill for this? I was like, oh my God, no, there's not. Like,
Mm.
I had a guy come in one day, he looks at the clock, he goes, you have 15 minutes. I'm like, no, you have 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah. I
it's
love
like,
that. I was just talking to somebody yesterday on my podcast about how we live in this time where I do value science,
oh
but
yeah,
I think sometimes we look at it backwards in the sense of I think science is a good explanation. Like it can be a good explanation for things, but I think sometimes we try to fix stuff with science without realizing that like science essentially this is look I'm not going to stay here claiming to be an expert. I'm just saying this is my interpretation as of
go
lately
for it.
is that
You're an
science
expert
is
on yourself.
yeah, sure. Yes, I appreciate that. So I feel like science is almost just like a measuring tool, right? So it's almost like, hey, look, this is the effect of whatever's happening out here. Like this is what's happening in your body now, just so you know. And I think we've gotten into this habit because there are certain things that like, oh, hey, we can kind of adjust the outcome with science, medicine, right?
Look at all the biohacking people are trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. Without realizing that, right? It's funny. The person comes in, you have 15 minutes, right? Or like, you need to fix this. And you're like, I need to fix it. You have this backwards.
Yeah,
Isn't there a pill for this? You're like, bro,
yeah,
what
seriously.
are you, like, it's actually funny because I can understand because I feel like I probably was that person at one point, but it's so funny to listen to it now. And you're like, you realize how like ass backwards you have that, right?
Well,
You're
it's
coming in here angry,
hilarious.
asking me to fix something. It's like, this is,
I had this
yeah.
guy who was a massage client who was one of those like traders on the trading floor.
Okay.
And he would come in and he would have his phone on the stool where he could see it while he was face down and he's
Oh
trading.
gosh.
He couldn't even take like half an hour
Uh,
for a massage.
yeah.
And one day I was treating him and he's like, what is that right there? I said, uh, that thing that you're looking at, that's what this thing in your shoulder is. And apparently he took me seriously. So I hadn't seen him for a couple months. He came back and he didn't have his phone and he was so relaxed. He goes, I quit my job. I'm like, whoa, good for you. Not my fault.
Not my fault.
But sometimes you just need that person to give you, like, hold up the mirror and go, look what you're
Sure.
doing. Like,
Sure.
I love science. Like, I broke my wrist when I was in Jordan
Hmm.
a little over a year ago, and I loved going to the hospital and having an X-ray. And it was an adventure too. Have you ever been
Yeah.
to Jordan?
I haven't. No.
Oh my goodness. I was in 3 different hospitals with all these doctors. Nobody
Yeah.
spoke English. It's like,
Yeah.
but he did an amazing job of setting my wrist.
Yeah.
And he showed me the X-ray. I was like, whoa, yeah, that's super broken. So when we need it, it's perfect.
Yes.
But
I want to make sure I establish that science
yeah,
and medicine are amazing.
they are. But when we're doing it to ourselves
Yeah.
and we're looking for something outside of us to fix it, we aren't
Hmm.
taking responsibility
Yeah.
for the life we're creating. And
Yeah.
that can be big or it can be small.
Sure.
I mean,
Well, and the thing is too is people might not be aware of it. This is what we were talking about. Is
yeah,
that like if you don't take time to cultivate your awareness of
yeah,
yourself, like what's going on inside of you, you will just not realize it. Right? That guy is
yeah,
sitting there like it's easy for you to see. You're like, bro, like it's your job. Like it's
yeah.
obviously your job. Right?
I'm
And
sitting
but
here
he can't
telling
see
you,
it.
no,
You know what I
no.
mean? But like if he did take the time to feel it and just be like, where is this coming from? I wonder what's causing it,
And
right?
it's
It
funny
would be
because
obvious.
I think sometimes people, like people know when they're stressed out, but I think sometimes they don't know, first of all, how bad,
Mm,
like how many things it can do to you.
sure.
Even though, like people know smoking is bad for them. Look, how many people do you still see standing around smoking?
Yeah.
But also, I think sometimes they don't know what to do. So I can remember, like, this was way long time ago. I went into the doctor and had started running. because I decided I wanted to run marathons.
Okay.
And I was getting shin splints. And she's like, well, you need to lose some weight. Okay, I'll see you next time. I'm like, guidance?
Yeah.
She's like, just go
Yeah.
lose weight. I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to walk out the door and suddenly reinvent how I do everything with
Yeah.
no clue of even how to start.
Like, you don't think if I wanted to lose weight up until this point, I would have already
Right?
been, right? It's like, oh, thanks for telling me. I didn't want it before. Now I
Yeah.
do all of a sudden.
Yeah. Why do you think I'm running, for God's sakes?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, okay. So I kind of wanted to go back to like the whole CPA thing too. I'm curious if you, I'm going back to this because I feel like, you know, anybody listening could just be in a 9 to 5 too, like just doing a normal job. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, just to be clear,
You know what?
there's nothing wrong with that.
I still have dinner with the people that I used to work with, even though
Yeah.
I've been gone for like 20, like over 20 years. I still have dinner with them and they still love being accountants. I'm like, more power to you.
Yes.
It wasn't my space.
Okay. So that being the case, how does someone know if maybe they're, for lack of a better word, meant to do something else, right? But they're maybe in a vehicle like you were in, and it was because before you answer that, quick question: do you feel like being a CPA, even though you can look back and I'm sure have gratitude and appreciation for your experience up until that point, do you feel like that was not essentially your calling, right? Like if you go back like 30 years, you would have done something different.
It was not my calling. And it's interesting because I ended up in that because I didn't know what to do. And I'm pretty smart, like not with saying that with vanity, but you know, I was in these classes and the guidance counselor said, well, you're never going to university because my marks weren't the greatest. I'm like, just because I didn't feel like studying. Like I never studied. I was passing, even though I never studied.
Yeah.
Imagine if I studied.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you know, you're pretty good at accounting. Maybe you should go into accounting because then you'll be able to make lots of money and have a career. I'm like, well, okay. So that was not taking responsibility for myself. But at 18, like back then, you're just kind of going with it.
Sure.
And so I ended up in that because it was easy, not and like I was obviously half decent at it because I became a senior director at some point, like down the road. I wouldn't say I was the smartest person, but I was good at what I did. And it's interesting, the aspect of it that I liked was I liked solving puzzles. So I liked the people I worked with and I liked puzzles, but most of accounting is repetition and monotony and too many details. I'm like, I'm not a detail person. It's like, you guys, this is getting really boring. So every couple of years they would promote me because I'd get bored. But I knew that, yes, I could do this job. Yes, it would pay me a lot of money. I didn't feel excited to be there. So how do I help people figure out if it's the right space? It's like, do you really like doing it? If you like doing it, then that's pretty awesome. Do you feel valued there? Do you feel like you're contributing to something? I was just like, one day I was listening to the radio and I was trying to balance this budget worth billions of dollars. Head office wanted another $1 million. The divisions said no. So I'm moving numbers around, trying to find $1 million. And the radio's on and it comes on and it says the man who owns the majority of the company is one of the richest men in, I can't remember whether it's the world or Canada. And I just went, F this. He does not need more money. Right? So it's like, he doesn't need another $1 million. Seriously. Like, forget it. So that didn't feel valuable to me. Right? It didn't feel valuable to me to be making shareholders more money, to be arguing with division heads and arguing with vice presidents and telling people you didn't fill out that expense form correctly. I was like, just feels so not me. But when I started practicing yoga, it was funny. I wasn't going to be a yoga teacher. That wasn't my plan at all. It
Yeah.
was the yoga teacher who I told that I ran the red light. I had become friends with her, and I actually I was her accountant because
Oh, okay.
I could tell she was so out of it. I'm like, let me just do your accounting for you. And in exchange for free yoga. She's like, yeah,
Nice.
that's a deal. So I was doing her books for her, and one day she came and she goes, yeah, we're moving back to Vancouver. I was like, what? I could feel the stress coming. I'm like, how am I going to like have yoga? She said, you're going to teach yoga. I said, I'm an accountant. She said, no, you're not. So she could see that I wasn't really an accountant.
Mm.
And she pushed me to take over her class, which I
Wow.
did. And I was like, whoa, yeah, this is actually good. So then I just dove right in and started teaching yoga after work and, taking courses because I felt like I should have some cred. So I
Yeah.
started taking all the yogas, and yeah, it was pretty awesome. I
Yeah,
tell
that is
people if you
awesome the
don't
way
like
that that
yoga,
worked
that's
out.
okay. Like the styles of yoga are so vast and so diverse. I tell people find a yoga teacher you like because then
Mm.
you'll actually like the yoga. And I also teach meditation. Now I teach Tai Chi. I fused yoga and Tai Chi together and
Hmm.
Qigong, and I'm like all over the place.
Nice. So, kind of what was going through my head when you were talking about this, I'm thinking about people who might be listening and I feel like there's going to be people on a whole spectrum, like people who already are established in a career, maybe somebody who's younger and even just starting out. And I think it's so funny because, like I was saying to you before, I'm sure you still appreciate the experience you
Oh
had, right?
yeah.
You can look back on your journey and be like, it was perfect. And so it's like I hesitate to even say to tell people like you should do this, or you shouldn't do this. But I feel like looking back, I'm like I'm grateful for the fact that I didn't commit to anything. So I never went to college. I literally was just like I don't know, right? I didn't know, and so I didn't want to choose, and I
Right.
never did choose. And I've done like I mean more things than I can count at this point, and I'm grateful for that whole experience. Okay, but I can see how if someone is like, well, this is the path I'm supposed to take. I'm
Right.
graduating high school, so I gotta pick a career, and I guess this one seems pretty good. And my teacher thinks I'd be good at this, which again, I had teachers telling me that too, right? Certain things you should do this, you're great at this, and they just do it. I can see how someone could end up in a spot where they're not really doing something that is like lighting a fire inside of them,
And think
and
about
it's
it,
just
like
because of what
depending
was
on the
expected.
cultures, like my husband now, he went to college because his dad's like, you have to do this. He's like, okay, and some cultures, you're expected to go become a professional.
Mm,
And I was the oldest of four kids, and I was the first grandkid. I was like, she's going to go to university, and she's going to
mm,
be super this and that. So you kind of feel those pressures,
yeah,
and that's not bad. You know, all of these people are trying to help you
yeah,
in the best way they know how.
yeah,
So I don't fault any of them. And if I think about it, like the business experience that I had from the time I graduated until I left the corporate world, like I got a lot going on. Like I have a lot of understanding of what's going on in those places,
sure,
big businesses and small businesses, because I was an auditor as well for a while.
yeah,
And that gives me a really strong base to launch myself into other things.
yeah,
And then I
absolutely.
look at, my sister, she was a bartender. She didn't want to go to college. And when she was good and ready, she had to, she's very stubborn, runs in the family. When she was good and ready, she went back to college and got her hospitality and was running hotels.
Mm,
So, but she was just like, yeah, I'm not doing it if I don't feel like it. So
yeah,
everybody has their own way to approach it. And it's like I teach meditation, and sometimes it's just like not even meditation, because some people are like, I can't meditate. I'm like, so I invite my clients, sit and stare out the window for 5 minutes and daydream. That, it, for me, is a form of meditation, daydreaming, because
mm,
your mind can kind of just drift around and just think about, what do I like about what I'm doing? What do I not like?
Mm,
What do I like doing? Oh yeah, I like that day that I, spent windboarding in Costa Rica or something. I
yeah.
wonder if they hire people to do that. Like, there's jobs now that didn't
Yeah.
exist when I graduated.
So
My
true.
niece manages social media. I was like, what? You get paid for that? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Like, that you can invent things that you want to do
Yeah.
as
I
long
was
as it
thinking,
has somebody
I
who wants
was,
to pay for it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was thinking about like someone who's coming up on having to make that decision. Like, let's say they're
Mm,
around 20 years old, 18 years old, or something like that. The way I think something I think is really important is just like you were saying, like in your own body, like you just need awareness. I think awareness is important in general, obviously,
mhm.
but specifically when it comes to things like college, I think it's important to understand that college is a business.
Yeah.
Like
Oh my, it is.
it's a sale that they make. It's just the sale is assumed, which is funny because that is a tactic for salespeople. Just assume the sale, and but like that's how it is. Like you're selling yourself, right? You're like, I gotta go to college. Like I just, I'm not saying that college is bad by any means.
No.
I think business in general is fantastic. I think sales is great. What I'm saying is that you just have to be aware of that, right? Like if you were
Yeah.
going to a car dealership and you just had no clue that the guy selling you the car is making a commission, like you might not get what you want. Like you might not get the deal that you're looking for. You might not get the right car for you. Like you have to understand the incentives of the people that you're dealing with. And so it's important for people to realize like when college in general, that decision whether you go or not, that is a for them is a sale, right? Like if you go,
Yeah.
they made a sale, they made money, and again, it's not a bad thing. It's just you have to understand
But
that.
it's a funny way to look at it because that's not how it's when you're in high school. You're like, you're gonna go get higher education. You're gonna go and get, become smart, and you don't realize on the other side. And it's funny because I went to university here, high school and university, or colleges and university. You get different certificates versus
Okay.
bachelor degrees.
Yeah.
And when I went back to college, because I did university, and then I went back to college to do my massage therapy degree certificate, I toured all the schools, and you knew that it was a business. Like,
Mm,
you knew it was a business. I was like, and maybe it was because I was older and had a perspective. I'm like, wow,
sure.
you guys really want me to just give you my money.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
Right? So but it is interesting. Like, they do, like, because it's just assumed, obviously, if you're going to get anywhere in the world, you have to get
Of
a higher
course.
education, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Not totally true, by the way. But that doesn't mean you should not do it just because, like, I think about when I was a teenager. Don't do it just because you want to, like, diss your parents or
Mm-hmm.
you want to rebel against something.
Mm-hmm.
Do it because it's not the right thing for you right now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right?
And that's what I don't mean that it's bad or the wrong decision for anybody, right? So this is my thing. If you're like, look, I know exactly what I want to do with my life,
Yeah.
or you're like 80% sure, fine, right? If that's what you want to do, like it's totally okay. But I think it's important that people realize if you don't know, if you're not 100% sure, like why should you be committing thousands of dollars and years of your life to something if you're just not sure about it? Like there
Right.
really isn't a rush.
And
And
if you
this
come
is
out at
something that
the
it took me
end,
years to learn, like years to learn. But because I would look at other people and where they were in their life, especially because me, like I said, I didn't make the decision to go to college. I saw other people and they were making decisions and building their lives and getting married and having these jobs and having kids and all this stuff. And I remember thinking, like, feeling like I was so far behind everyone else. And now it's funny because I look at my life and I look at some of those people and now I'm like, I'm miles ahead of you guys because I
right?
went my own way. Right. And it like,
And it's not a
but
race.
it's also not a race anyway, right? I'm not
And
saying
it's
it
not
like
a
that.
competition.
Yeah, I only say it in that context as speaking to my past self. Like,
But it
what
is
was the
true
point of that?
because
You know?
I was coaching this young woman who had gone to college. She finished college. She wanted to be an animator, and she hadn't worked in animation. She had, but she like, and she wasn't even 30 yet. And she was saying, "My life is over because look at my friends. They're already, got these jobs." I'm like, "You're 20, like, you're not even 30."
Yeah.
Like, I'll put my hand up. I'm 58. Like, your life is way far from being over.
Yeah.
But trying to navigate her through that mindset of, do you still want to do this? Like, did you do it because you wanted to do it? And do you still want to do it? And
Yeah.
if, like, where are your strengths and what can we get you? How can we help you get into what you want to do?
Yeah.
But you're never, like, I always tell people, like, what are you racing towards? Because you know what the finish line is, right? Like, just take your
Great
time.
point. That's a great point. You know, at the end, you die, right?
Yeah. So take your
What are you
time.
rushing for? Enjoy it right now.
Yeah,
That's actually
exactly.
hilarious. That's so funny. You know the deal, right? At the end of this, you die. No more.
Nobody gets to skip the finish line. Everybody crosses the finish line.
It's so funny. I love that. I love that. You know what I wanted to ask you about was
Yeah.
India. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
what I was curious about, did you before you went on that trip, had you ever been somewhere like that, done a long trip like that? Anything? Was this like completely new for you?
Completely new.
Okay,
Like the trips that I had been on before, like I did a little boat cruise through the rivers in Germany, and I climbed Machu Picchu, but I went with G Adventures, where little dudes were carrying all the stuff. You know, I just had to kind of show up,
okay,
have some tea. Um, so I'd never done anything that, like, even just self-directed. I'd never done a really self-directed vacation like that before,
sure,
except to Florida, but that doesn't really count. Like,
okay, yeah.
whatever.
No, I get it. A whole other country. I mean, well,
Yeah.
it's a different
Yeah.
country,
And
but I get
now
what
I've
you
been
mean.
to India 3 times.
Really?
Yeah. So I did the 3 months of just whatever. Like, I actually
Mm-hmm.
saw the Dalai Lama while I was there. Crazy, crazy pants. And then a year later, I went back and I'd hiked in the Himalayas. I went with a friend of ours who is from there. And we hiked from Ladakh to Leh through the Himalayas for like 17, I think it was 17 or 18 days all told. Had really intense altitude sickness at one point. By the way,
Mm,
it's not fun. And then the third time I went, I spent a month in an ashram in the south.
that's super
Yeah,
cool.
pretty awesome. And it's funny because I would go back again and just hang out. And every time I look at my vacation list, I'm like, ah, but there's still other places I need to get to before I go back. So it'll just have to wait.
Yeah, yeah. I admire what you did. I think it's really cool. You know, I this is kind of what was going through my head is that I've never really so I don't feel like for me going somewhere in a strange country for 3 months is like what I need. But I'm sitting here thinking like I've done a lot of tiny interventions over the years where I've been like, I need a change, you know, and I would like make a really big change in my life and then like adjust accordingly and like learn from it. And right. And so
Right.
that's kind of like my path. But I could see how somebody who was a CPA for 15 years, who was doing something that now you will admit was not really actually your thing. It's like I could see how you're like, I need something big to like disconnect me from this and kind of just get to me, right? Like I need to
Right.
separate from my circumstances because like so many of us define our life by our circumstances and don't realize that all of that stuff is just it's made up. Okay. It's made up.
Well, and we've put
Like
it in
you walked away
place.
from your job, your marriage, you sold your house, and you went to India for 3 months.
Yeah. And from, because I had been in, like, the longer that you're in a situation, sometimes the harder it is to change it, right?
Oh, it's of
So,
every time.
yeah,
The claws just go deeper
true.
and deeper.
The ruts
Yeah.
in the road.
Yeah.
So, to change that many things, and like, it was basically my whole life, right?
Yeah.
I exploded my whole life.
Yeah.
So I needed to go far enough away from it to let to let the dust settle.
Yeah. But
Basically.
this is the beautiful part about it is because you're like, I blew up my whole life. But what's so interesting is that like at the end of it, again, none of that stuff is you. It is simply your surroundings. It's simply your
Yeah.
circumstances and this like this like I don't even know how to describe it. This like movie set that you've put together, right? And you were just like, I'm gonna abandon all that. I need to go and just like get clear on
Got to write a
me.
new script.
Yes, exactly.
But it's funny, like if you talk in the like mystical world, they like to say this a lot, that you are the creator of your reality, right?
Mm.
So, and people will go, yeah, 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 yeah. That is true. Like, what you allow into your life is your choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that you're stuck with it. Like,
Mm.
if you let something into your life, you're like, ooh, shit, no, that wasn't a good decision. You can send it back away. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to keep it
Mm-hmm.
unless it's a baby. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But even then, like, you do have options.
Sure.
But if you think about it, if there's stuff in your life that you don't like, the only person who can change it is you.
Yeah.
You can't leave it up to a, oh, God is going to take care of this because I asked for it. I'm like, well,
Sure.
sure, he might if you actually took some action,
Mm.
because he's going to act through you,
Yeah.
whatever God you choose. I'm
Well,
multi-denominational.
and I think
I'm all
too,
in.
what I think the definition of creating, right? When you say like you're creating your reality, I think that's important to establish, because you also said letting things happen, and
Yeah.
that in itself is a form of creation, right? Like your experience is everything that like you see here. Like I feel like if someone plays a video game,
My
right, where it's like
box. This
first
is my
person
box.
and you're looking
First
around and
person
that's
shooter.
but literally, right? That's exactly it. Like that, like everything in your reality is what you like. It's just what you see, what you're experiencing, and like what you're creating essentially is what you're allowing to come into that experience, and you can change that, right? You're
Right?
like you can ultimately be like, no, I don't want to participate in that. Goodbye. I'm
Yeah.
switching to this over here.
And some people are super sensitive, and they don't even realize it, that they're sensitive to other people's
Mm,
stuff,
sure.
and they don't know how to. Well, first, if you don't know that you're sensitive to it, you're just like, why am I pissed off? Why am I sad? It's like, oh, it's not me, it's them.
Yeah.
So there are meditation practices to, you know, put up your boundaries, like own your space.
Mm,
It's called owning your space. Like,
okay.
this is my space, and yeah, I see you having your drama right there. It's very interesting. It's not coming into my space, right? It's because you can get
Are you
swept
saying this out
away.
loud or to yourself?
I say it to myself.
Okay. So I just want to be. I just want to
Well,
establish. I
it
just want to make
depends
sure I
on the
understand.
person. It depends on the person.
Okay.
Like, my higher self is telling their higher self, I see this person's drama. I'm not getting into this
Mm,
game. But if it's somebody on the bus or the streetcar who's perhaps not in their full mental capacities, I'll just
I
say it out
see.
loud.
I see. I see.
Not getting into your
Okay.
space, buddy. Like, back
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
But it's always comes back. I feel like it comes back, maybe not always. It often comes back to, we have this fear of taking responsibility for the things in our life, for how our life is. We want somebody outside of us to fix it. And we've been trained for that. Like, no fault of anybody. We've
Yeah.
always been trained. Mom and dad make this decision. The school teacher makes the decision. Your boss
Yes.
makes the decision. You just
Yes.
follow all the orders. So
Yes.
we've made really good, obedient people who now don't know what to do to take back control
And are
of
ultimately
themselves.
looking outside of themselves for the solution.
Yeah,
See,
yeah.
this is the part that's crazy is like if you admit that you are responsible, if you take responsibility, then it's like, oh shit,
Yeah.
everything is my fault.
Damn
It's
it.
all on me, right? And I think that's the barrier. I think that's where, like, to me, I look back at myself at least, right? I can't speak for other
Yeah,
people, but I can see that being the barrier to taking responsibility, because you realize that if it is your responsibility, then everything is. Your
yeah,
whole experience has been, and everything you've been complaining about, everything you think sucks, it's your responsibility. And that's
yeah.
not easy to come to grips with, you know?
And there's people probably in therapy over that. And I don't think the therapist will ever tell them that it's their fault.
Hmm.
And that's not fault in a judgment way. You made those decisions, and you maintained the energy around those decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and you continue to believe that those things are true.
Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
change it, start saying no, start sending away the things that aren't working,
Yeah.
start deciding intentionally what's going to work for you. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes. We all, like, I heard this quote the other day: if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning anything. I thought, oh my God, I love it. I got to write it down. So there's nobody in the world who's perfect at every moment. Don't believe anything on social media. It's all BS. And I post on social media, so
you're like, everything I post.
You're not going to see me with my, well, maybe sometimes you do see me without my hair done, but right? It's like, oh, I look like crap today. Let's do a reel. No.
But I like what you said before about fault. Like, it's not about necessarily about blame as much as it is just about control. Like, it's kind of like you're the one with it's like back to the video game thing. Like, you're the one with the controller here. You just don't realize it, right? Like, you've been operating mindlessly, but it's like you're the one who's got the controller here. That's all it is. It's not about it's your fault, like you're bad or anything like that. No. It's just you just need to realize that the controller's in your hand.
No one is bad. Like, there is. No. I don't think there is anyone in the world who is bad. Just making decisions that aren't the best for them.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I don't even think there's really evil people in the world. They're just people who they're just making they're just making the wrong decisions.
I do not disagree with you. I'm telling right? you, like, I've been saying this for years now. Like, I really do believe that people are good. And like, my biggest thing is, like, if you rewind far back enough, like, let's say the worst person you can think of, you rewind far back enough, that person was a baby. Like, at some point they were a baby, an innocent baby who had no idea what they were doing. And I promise you that they were not an evil baby. Okay. Like, they were just a harmless little baby.
Like one of those horror movies with the baby with the knife stabbing people.
Exactly. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I'm not saying, see, this is the thing about it. They have to take responsibility, right? So if they're getting where they are, it is because of choices they've made over time. But also at the same time, looking at it as a third party observer, there's probably a lot of things that happen to them that, like, right, I would really not want happen to me. Okay. Yeah. And like, that's probably part of the reason why they are where they are right now.
It's like when you get a new computer, right? So you get a new computer. So a baby is born, and then you start installing software. What if the bad software got installed?
Sure.
And nobody said, hey, that kid's got a virus in their software,
yeah,
and it's making them do bad things. We need to, like, reprogram. And I'm not saying this isn't 1984. We're not sending people to reprogramming.
Yeah.
I had to read that book in 1984 in English class. But you probably weren't even born yet, were you?
I was not, sorry.
I'm okay. I'm cool. But it's like, everybody, including me, your whole life is a story that you tell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So where did the stories come from? They weren't here when you got here, right? Now, yeah, you can talk about spirit and, higher self and soul's purpose. But the day-to-day operation of us, for the most part, is the stories that we've learned about ourselves over time, over the years. Like, I don't know if you can still tell, but I am actually a ginger. My hair's gone white. And when I was a kid growing up, I was the kid who was teased all the time. So it's like, oh, I hated having red hair and, freckles. And it was something to make people fun of me. So obviously it's not good to be a ginger. And then one day I went, F this, being ginger is hot. And and I'm unique. And the rest of you are losers. No. Barbie always used to be Malibu Barbie. She was blonde with a tan. I've never been blonde, and I will never tan. So everything in your life is the story that you made up about yourself.
Yeah.
So why can't you make up the story that, wow, those decisions I made, I think I'll change them because these ones aren't working out. So there's no blame, there's no shame, there's no judgment, and really, in reality, other people's opinions of you don't matter.
Sure. Right? Man, I love that. I love what you said about the stories because, man, it's just so true. Like, I've had an opportunity to kind of, like, hear from some of my friends recently and kind of hear some, like, perspectives that I just wasn't aware of. And it's just like, man, that story you're telling yourself is so, like your life experience could be completely different right now. Like, it just instantly change. Like, it can complete 180 right now. If you
Yeah.
just change the story you're telling yourself, like don't even change your circumstances, just change the story, and like your life would be so much better. But
And it
it's super
changes,
interesting you said that.
it can change instantly, and people don't believe it
Mm-hmm.
because you're so enamored with knowing what's going on and the way the story, like even if it's not a good story, you're so enamored with it and you're so used to it. And it's like your favorite blanket that has gone into shreds. You're like, I can't huggle it anymore, but it's my favorite
Well,
blanket.
and you've convinced yourself of it,
Yeah, right.
so you believe it.
I mean, even me. So my high school boyfriend, this was before narcissism was a thing. I had no idea he was a narcissist. So for a long time for a long time while I was with him, I thought that I was unattractive and that I was not very smart.
Mm,
And it took me years to go, hold on, that's not right, because I was living it. I was living it.
yeah.
And the weirdest thing was it changed overnight because something his mother said one day. And it was just like she slapped me metaphorically. And all of a sudden I went, hold on, this isn't true. And then I broke up with him.
Yep.
But it was just for
Thanks,
a
Mom.
long, yeah, it was his mother. I didn't
Yeah,
tell
I
him
know. That's what I mean. Thanks, Mom.
because she really liked me and she didn't want me to break up with him. I'm like, okay, no, I gotta go. But
Yeah.
it's like so crazy that that's why community is important too. The people
Mm,
around you feed into the story that you're telling yourself,
sure.
and this person was feeding into a bad story
Yeah.
about me, and I believed him
Yeah.
until I went, wait, that's not right. So I have to take this person out of my circle because that's the wrong story. That's not true. And I
Yeah.
have to rewrite a new story and I have to get used to my new awesome self.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is part of how you help people, correct?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. I feel like we've had a fantastic conversation, but I
We
would
could
love
keep
for
going,
anybody
like you and
listening
I,
to.
just blah, 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 blah.
I know, right? We could talk probably forever. So, but if for anybody listening, I want them to know like how you can help them, and then if they want to take advantage of that help, how
Yeah.
they do it.
I help people on one-on-one a lot because
Okay.
some people don't want to bring their crap into a group, right?
Yeah,
They
I
feel
get
like
that.
they want to like have that. So I always say no judgment and no agenda. It's like you bring your stuff and we work through to get you where you got to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that can take a little time or a lot of time. Some clients I work with for 2 or 3 months and they're like, I'm on it. And then they'll go away for a year and then come back. Some people just have stayed for a while.
Okay.
And I actually just finished writing a chapter in a book and it's on Amazon and I can't remember the title of the book. Shit.
Well, you wrote a chapter in this book?
Yeah, I contributed. My chapter is called Life is Suffering Until You Choose. Yeah. It's like values inspired living. And I'm one of the authors. But I also am just in the process of, it's going to release probably on Valentine's Day because I feel like it's the summer of love, or it's the month of love, is a membership. It's like a hub.
Okay.
It's free. It's a free place for people to come and like hash out their stuff, get resources for, like I have all these free resources for people to use
Okay.
because some people just like to do it themselves.
Yeah,
Right?
sure.
They just want to be quiet with themselves and sit and journal and think and
Man, it's so
then
true.
come when they need it, right?
Yeah.
So
Some
but
people
everything
feel
is
like they
some-
need
yeah.
help. Some people like it in a group, just being
Yeah.
around other people. Some people feel
So
like
try
I could
to
do
have
this on my own.
something for everybody.
I love that. Yeah, that's
Right?
fantastic.
Because I want so this is my goal in life. This is my big hairy audacious goal. This is my soul's purpose for being here. Is every single person that I can help become more authentic of who they are and happy and fulfilled and peaceful in what they do, then that flows outwards to their relationships, their community, the world, and then I envision regularly a tidal wave of happy people creating a better world. This is my vision.
I love that. I love that. So, if people want to take advantage of this help, how do they connect with you? Do you have a website,
It's
social
all
media?
at heatherstewart.coach. Easy peasy.
heatherstewart.coach. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Heather, I really do appreciate you coming on. I feel like we had such a great conversation.
It was awesome. You're super fun.
Thanks so much for joining me. And for anybody listening, I'm in the process of writing a book currently.
Awesome.
It'll be available. It's the same title as the podcast, How to Be a Person. Anything that I have, like whenever the book is available, it'll be available on my website, howtobeaperson.co. All the links to my social media are on there as well, for anyone listening. But other than that, Heather, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Good talking.
Same. Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.